As a society, we're kind of obsessed with keeping records. We document everything: lives, crises, big achievements, all to build this official shared history. But what happens when an experience is so personal, so strange, that it just doesn't fit? What happens when it challenges the very records we try to keep?
I mean, think about it. We record tributes to people who've lived lives of service, like this one for Mitchell Meisner from the U.S. Congressional Record. We do it to make sure their impact isn't forgotten. And we do the same for moments of incredible heroism, right? We document these events so they become part of our national story. And, of course, we track the big, long-term stuff, the quantifiable impact of organizations on their communities. This is the solid, verifiable stuff, the facts of our history. Okay, but this is where our story really takes a turn. We're about to step away from that clean, official record and into something way more private and, frankly, a lot more mysterious. We're talking about the record of the human body itself and what happens when it seems to defy all medical explanation.
And this brings us to a really controversial place. What happens when you try to apply the cold, hard, objective tools of science to something as personal and spiritual as praying for a healing?
And here is the core of the whole debate. On one side, you've got people saying, hey, we've got the clinical tools to measure this stuff, so why shouldn't we? But on the other side, people are asking if it's even appropriate to put religious faith under a microscope in a lab. This tension, right here, is the backdrop for the incredible research we're going to dive into. So, how in the world do you even begin to scientifically investigate something like a miracle? Well, believe it or not, there's a place that's been trying to do exactly that for over 100 years.
Yup, the Medical Bureau at the pilgrimage site in Lourdes, France. They've been systematically documenting and investigating claims of healing since way back in the late 1800s. So this isn't some new agey thing, it's a long, long history of trying to apply serious medical scrutiny to some pretty extraordinary claims. So what does this process actually look like? Well, as you can see, it is anything but casual. It's this multi-stage, totally exhaustive review. It all starts with a simple report, but then it moves into a super deep investigation of medical records, and finally, it goes before an international committee of doctors, and they're all there to answer one single question: is this healing medically unexplained? And as you can imagine, a process this rigorous has turned up some absolutely mind-bending case files. Let's take a look at a couple of examples that really push the boundaries of what doctors thought was possible. All right, our first case is about a 53-year-old man named Jeff. He shows up at the ER with chest pain, and then he just collapses. Full cardiac arrest. And this is the critical moment. After almost 40 minutes of trying to bring him back, the medical team made the call. The ECG was flat. For all intents and purposes, it was over. Jeff was officially declared dead. But then, in a moment that baffled everyone, after a final prayer and one last shock, his heart just started again. A few days later, this man, who had been officially, clinically dead, was not only alive, he was sitting up in bed, talking, and on his way to a full recovery. Okay, let's look at a totally different case. This one involves a young man who, since he was just 2 years old, suffered from a severe paralysis of the stomach. I mean, just imagine this. For 16 years, his entire life was defined by this condition. He couldn't eat. He was completely dependent on feeding tubes just to survive. This wasn't something that came and went. It was a severe, chronic, lifelong illness. And then everything changed. After receiving prayer, he said he felt something like an electric shock. That same night, he ate a full meal with no problems, and his symptoms were just gone. The feeding tubes came out. When researchers dug through all the medical journals, they couldn't find a single other case like it. His recovery was, and I quote, unique in the literature. So these cases of dramatic physical changes are fascinating, for sure. But the investigation dug up something else. Something even stranger. They found a paradox where the objective medical data and a person's actual life experience were in completely opposite corners. So get this. Researchers studied 3 people who all said they had an instant, dramatic healing from hearing loss right after prayer. They described their ears popping open and claimed their lives were totally transformed. But when they were put through every hearing test imaginable, there was zero measurable improvement. The hard data said nothing had changed at all. And we're not talking about a little blip on the chart here. When the researchers took these findings to a top audiology expert, She was stunned. She said that, yeah, small differences between what a patient feels and what a test shows can happen, but she had never seen anything even close to this scale. So, after all of this, the incredible recoveries, the baffling paradoxes, what was the final scientific verdict from this big research team? What did they conclude?
This might be the biggest shocker of the whole thing. The number of cases that the study officially labeled medically unexplained? 0. A big, round 0. The bar for proof was just impossibly high.
But wait, because that is not the end of the story. While no single case could be labeled a miracle, the researchers found something else that was incredibly significant. They called it an unexplained pattern. Across all these different cases, they saw the same things happening over and over. The healing was sudden, it was unexpected, it was clearly linked in time to prayer, and it came with these profound physical and emotional feelings. And this is the real takeaway here. The big discovery wasn't in proving one single event was a miracle. It was the medically remarkable fact that this specific pattern of sudden, life-changing healing kept happening again and again and again. Which leaves us with this huge, fascinating question. The official record, the hearing test, the lab results can sometimes completely miss the personal record of a life that's been turned upside down for the better. It really makes you wonder, if our best scientific tools can't measure it, does that mean it didn't really happen? Or does it just mean our definition of what can be recorded is way too small?